Hello and welcome to this special webinar where we're talking about grant funding that is available for technology products and projects that can help educational organizations gather funding for upgrading their facilities to be more modern, to support distance learning, to support video communications. And we're going to be talking about all of that today with two expert grant writers who are going to be joining us to review for the United States a national review of the various funding opportunities that are available to educational organizations. So I'm very excited to be joined by Marley Dunnberg, who I'm going to introduce you to in a moment. And we're going to talk about all the great funding opportunities that are available. And then I'm going to give you guys some ideas of new technology that you can apply for these grants with. So without further ado, I will bring this over to Marley, who is going to be coming to us via Zoom. Marley, how are you today? Marley is here in our Zoom chat. I can see her there. She's muted. There you are, Marley. How are you today? Looks like Marley's having a little bit of AV trouble. Wouldn't be a webinar without that, now would it? I'm not hearing Marley. Is anyone else hearing Marley? What? I'm not hearing Marley. Okay. Hold on, Mike. You didn't unmute Marley. Marley's talking, and we're not hearing her because she's muted on our side. I'm sorry, Marley. 1 second, please. You need to unmute Marley there. Right there. Sorry, Marley.
No worries. Can you hear me okay now, Paul?
Yes.
Great. Well, thanks so much for having me today. I'm really looking forward to chatting with folks.
Great. Well, I'll let you go ahead and share your screen and take it away.
Great. Let's see if this works okay. Just a second. We'll do the share screen. All right. Can you see the screen okay?
No, I'm not seeing the screen. There we go.
How about now?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Is that working okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We're really looking forward to having you. So just to give you an idea of what we'll be talking about today, we're going to be covering a few different options for funding opportunities for educational institutions to get PTZOptics equipment covered. And there's something called a PEG fee. We'll also be talking about private and foundation grants, as well as public government grants. And then we'll go ahead and wrap up with additional information from Paul about equipment options from PTZOptics that will work well for educational organizations, and conclude with a Q&A. And we do have a special guest here today from the Colorado Department of Education who specializes in grants. So we'll be able to ask her questions as well. So feel free to save your questions for the end. And we'll just go ahead and introduce ourselves as we get there. And again, my name is Marley Dunnberg, and I am a nonprofit consultant and grant writer. So PTZOptics is a manufacturer of robotic camera equipment and solutions for live streaming options. And they started in 2014 by a group of engineers who specialized in the audiovisual field, who were really looking for a way to offer mid-range but high quality and affordable live streaming equipment. So you're probably wondering, how can your educational institution fund live streaming and video equipment? And fortunately, there's a lot of ways to do that. One opportunity is what's called the PEG fee, or the Public Education and Government Fee. Unfortunately, we'll have a special guest here on August 4th who will be able to talk more about the PTZ specifically for municipalities, but I do just want you all to be aware of this as an opportunity. So the PTZ is something that's collected through your town's cable service provider, so typically a company like Comcast, and these terms are negotiated during the franchise agreement process. So in exchange for allowing Comcast, say, to gain access to the city, they'll start collecting fees per cable subscriber that go ahead and benefit the local municipality. And a portion of those fees has to go to educational organizations. It can be used to fund things like school board meetings or live streaming sports events. You could even work with your municipality to help your school district gain access to a local studio to use for classes, for instance. A lot of times, cities and towns are actually collecting the PTZ without them really realizing it. So this is an opportunity that is really underutilized. So definitely talk to your local city or town about if they're collecting PTZs, and if so, how your school can take advantage of it. There are several types of grants that would be of benefit for schools and school districts. There are federal, state, local, and county grants, private foundation, and corporate grants. When you're searching for grants, you have to make sure that your organization is considered eligible for it. And a lot of grants are targeted specifically to nonprofit organizations, especially when we're looking at corporate giving and foundation giving. However, there's still exceptions to that rule. So today we're going to cover just a sample of applications that you can apply for that might be a good fit for your organization, but this definitely is not an exhaustive list. Something to note is that there's a big trend and push right now in grants to cover rural and low income giving. So if your school district is located in a rural area, or you have a high low income population, or you don't have broadband infrastructure, you can go ahead and oftentimes get this funded by a grant. One of the resources you'll be getting after this webinar is a grant writing guide specifically for educational agencies that are trying to fund equipment from PTZOptics. And in that guide, it'll cover in more detail how you go about developing your grant writing team, how you'll write the grant and submit it. So I'm going to hand it over now to Kathryn, our representative from the Colorado Department of Education, to talk through some opportunities for various government grants.
Thanks, Marley. I'm just going to pop on camera really quick to say hello, and then I'm going to turn it off because there's some bandwidth issues sometimes in my area, which is kind of funny given what we're talking about, right? Just trying to figure out how that works, and I got real dark. So I'm going to go ahead and go off now. So I'm going to talk to you about a couple different government grant opportunities, which are also, I mean, they're not all government, right? So, but if you have questions about these or other grant opportunities, let us know in the Q&A, and we will be able to talk a little bit more in depth about any of them. So the first one that we've got up here is the National Endowment for the Arts, which is for institutions of higher education, specifically community colleges and those granting bachelor's degrees. There's no match required, which is a very exciting thing when you're doing a grant. A lot of grants require matching funds, and they're open for applications. You can get up to $150,000 in funding, and this is a really neat one where it's combining humanities and science together that allows for a lot of interpretation and creative license when you're writing the grant to fit a variety of different projects. The next one are your ESEA title grants. And this is really my bailiwick. This is where I spend a lot of my time. These are formula funded grants, which means you're going to have to work with your school district if you're not one, in order to access these funds. But these funds are specifically designed to help students meet academic challenges And each of the title programs has a different focus. I'm going to talk about a couple of the different title programs today, the ones that I think would be most applicable to buying this type of equipment. So your first one would be your Title I, which is your largest endowment of money that each school gets usually. And those are from your low-income students. And the purposes of Title I is to help those low-income students access high-quality education. And with the pandemic, we realized that there really is a need for digital options in education, whether that is a hybrid learning system, a fully remote school, or even just being able to project out to a student who is currently at home for either disciplinary or health reasons. And this really seems to be the way that education is moving. The other one that I really want to talk to you about is Title IV. So Title IV is well-rounded education. And one of the aspects that you can fund under Title IV, there's actually two where this would fall in, is under the well-rounded subcategory, which can do anything that provides students with access to things outside of their core curriculum. So if you were doing an audio-visual unit or a graphic design, where the students could actually use this equipment to create projects of their own. And the other one would be the technology aspect of Title IV. So if you get over $10,000, which is the minimum allocation in Title IV, then you have to spend at least 15% of that allocation on technology or technology infrastructure, which is exactly what this is, right? This is infrastructure and technology that is going to allow schools to access stuff in different ways. Sorry about that. And so these are also higher education grants. There is a Department of Ed grant under Title V that works with institutions of higher education, specifically those who serve high minority populations. And that is a very broad grant. It can do almost anything that is focused to providing extra opportunities for those students, including the use of technology for distance learning programs, which is a great fit for your PTZOptics information. The next set of grants we're going to talk about is our USDA distance learning grants. And this is it's made for rural communities to really help insert the infrastructure in, so broadband, that kind of stuff. Almost all entities are eligible, and as long as you're within the allowable assets class, so capital assets, so all of this equipment would fall into there. And also instructional programming and technical assistance, which is something else that this one allows. But it does require a 15% match. So the entity that is going to use this would have to have 15% of their own funds or funds from a different donor source that they could put up against that grant. The next one we're going to talk about is the Community Facilities Grant from USDA, which is working on developing essential community facilities in rural areas. You have to, and they do mean rural, it has to be under 20,000 residents, and it has to either be a non-public body, a nonprofit, or tribe. As we know, most of our public schools are nonprofit, and even some of our private schools are nonprofits, so that does not exclude educational institutions. And that grant does also allow equipment purchases. Now we're going to talk about Usc Cares and Esser. These are all grants that are run by the U.S. Department of Education, and the CARES Act, Esser falls under the CARES Act, are the emergency relief funds from COVID. And this is really a big deal right now. These are time-limited funds, but there is a lot of money in the hands of schools that have to use these funds in ways that help education in pandemic-related areas. So a lot of school districts are working really hard right now to find technology resources that they can use that will allow them to provide that distance learning to their students, right? That access to education in case of another pandemic or similar situation. I live in Colorado, as Marley mentioned, and a lot of times we have communities that are affected by wildfires. And a lot of the school districts are talking about how if they had to evacuate their communities because of a fire, that they could still continue to provide education because of the technology they've been able to get under this grant. So, but these funds are fixed. They are limited, and there are a time requirement to apply. The schools already have them. They are literally looking for allowable ways and companies to help them use this funding in the best possible direction. The Secure Our Schools grants are safety and equipment and violence prevention. These are for state and local governments, and so they can apply. So you have to work with your local municipality, and it allows for benefits, equipment, technology, and training, consultation, and software. So you could, if you come up with a safety or violence prevention programming, this would really fit well within this grant. Then the next one we're going to talk about is the AmeriCorps. So it currently supports workforce and technology enhancements, which is what we're doing. And there's new programs that are getting ready to roll out. These are local and national nonprofits, schools and government agencies, as well as faith-based communities can access this. So this is one of the ones that if you're working with a private school, especially a private school that is faith-based, so that they can get access to these funds. Some general notes that I want to make sure everyone is aware of is that there are a lot of grants right now for broadband infrastructure. The state and local governments are really kind of putting their dollars behind this expansion after the COVID-19 pandemic because they realized how essential that connectivity was to all of us in our everyday lives. A lot of grants allow for technology and equipment purchases, but not all of them do. So you need to make sure that that is something that you research while you're doing your grant programming. And some states, including Maine, Delaware, and Ohio, have state level funding for digital access and connectivity. I would bet that a lot of states have that extra access right now. And the Department of Education is a fantastic resource if you want to look for local funding sources. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Marley to go to our next slide.
Great. Thank you so much, Kathryn. We appreciate that overview. I also want to mention that there's a lot of local, regional, and private foundation grants, some of which are Walmart, Alfred Sloan, Ford, 3M, and then community foundations, which I'll chat about here in just a second, that really like funding schools. Almost all of these require that you are a nonprofit school and not a for-profit school. There is a special emphasis right now on charter schools. So if you are a charter school, definitely look at opportunities specific to that. Some of these foundations, including the Ford Foundation, are invitation only, which means that there is not an open application that you can just go onto their website and apply for. You have to specifically be invited by the foundation. And in some cases, you can actually build a relationship with that foundation with the long-term intention of being invited to apply. So build that relationship, inquire about opportunities. Some foundations even encourage you to write a formal letter of inquiry to start off that process. When looking for grants, know that the strongest way to research grants is by identifying the purpose of your project. Most grants are based on a goal or mission or vision. And so first identify what you're wanting to get funds for. Is it to improve access to video programs for low-income students in your district? Or is it to ensure ongoing distance learning for students in case of rural areas or during another pandemic, for instance? One great resource to know about are community foundations. And there are community foundations located in different regions across the country that pool together local resources to offer various types of grants. And a lot of them do allow schools to apply as eligible organizations. In the resources you'll get, there'll be a link there to search for your local community foundation. Sometimes they'll qualify for multiple foundations in your area, one for your town and then one for your state as well. So definitely check out that resource and contact your community foundation for more information. I just want to mention a few great resources while you're looking for grants. To find government grants, grants.gov is the way to go. Make sure you use that site and not other private search sites that often comes up in Google for government grants, just because there's no guarantee that that is up to date and has accurate information. Candidates Foundation Center online is wonderful for looking for private foundation grants, and they also have some corporate grants listed. Your local library often will have free access to the Foundation Center, so definitely check that out before purchasing a membership. And then you can also look at specific sources based on the type of funds that you're needing and the purpose of your grant. So look at federal grant making agencies based on the type of project, and then your state government's website and local portals. Especially your local state Department of Education should have a list of all of your state facilitated funds. And I just want to hand it off to Kathryn here for a second to share some tips and tricks as a grant reviewer for things that you can do to increase your chances of succeeding.
So as someone who's lucky enough to get to work with grants on a regular basis, I have a couple of simple tips and tricks that will make your grant writers or grant readers happy, which makes you much more likely to gain access to funds. They sound pretty straightforward and simple, but I guarantee you they're not done nearly often enough. So the first one I would like to spit out there is, if they give you things in bullet points, make sure you answer every bullet point. For example, if they ask you how you'll consult with stakeholders and then they list parents, teachers, community members, make sure that you answer how you're going to plan to work with each one of those community members, because they're looking for them. They don't put anything extra in these grant applications and information packets. That everything in there is important and they're looking for it in some aspect. Another one is, don't leave your grant writer with questions, right? Explain things simply and succinctly, or grant reader, I'm sorry, simply and succinctly as possible, because if they have questions, they're going to make inferences, and the inferences almost never work in your favor. It's always better to write a little bit more and make sure that you are cohesive in your answer. And the last little tick and trick that I'm going to leave for you is connect everything back to the grant purpose. For example, with the Esser funding that's out, whether it's the Carissa, which is Esser 2, or ARP, which is Esser 3, and those are all under the CARES Act, everything has to have a relation to COVID-19. So that means everything you're going to buy, you have to tie back to COVID-19. Whether that is a tangential leak, like we are aware through the results of the pandemic that connectivity is even more important to students and communities now than it ever was before, or a direct link to, we need video software so that we can socially distance by splitting students up into multiple classrooms. But everything you can link back to these grant purposes or the foundation purpose is going to make your grant opportunities just that much stronger.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kathryn. I do want to mention just a few resources, and again, you'll be able to click these links right afterwards. But definitely talk to your local library for access to different subscriptions. Oftentimes, there'll be a librarian on staff who is trained in grant research. So that's a wonderful free resource. Your state's nonprofit association also will have resources on grant trainings and grant writers, even if it's not specific to educational institutions. Most of those folks will be trained in education research as well. And then if you are wanting to brush up on your grant writing skills, or if you're new to this, Candid Learning has a ton of free resources that are on demand, or upcoming webinars on various trainings with experts in this field. So definitely check that out if you're wanting to be able to do more grant writing in-house. Now I'm going to hand it over to Paul to talk about how you can use PTZOptics equipment within your school.
All right. Thank you, Marley. I appreciate that. If you can go ahead and stop sharing your screen, I'm going to share my presentation.
Okay.
And I'm going
Thanks.
to talk a little bit today about ideas for distance learning, for enabling and streamlining better teaching and learning experiences for students. And we're going to talk about classrooms. We're going to talk about meeting spaces in educational organizations where teachers and parents and stakeholders can discuss and do some of these distance learning and video communications projects. And there's a lot of technology that is included that you can look at to video enable meeting spaces, classrooms, and places like that. So I just want to highly, just recommend that you reach out to our partner team, which is partners at PTZOptics.com. And they actually can help you walk you through the different solutions that are available, but also connect you with a integrator, a local professional who can actually install and customize all of this for your school. So everything with HuddleCam HD and PTZ Optics, we literally offer everything from a webcam all the way up to the most advanced auto tracking cameras. So I'm going to mute my microphone. Wow, twice in this webinar. Sorry about that. So webcams are obviously ideal for many teachers, and so many teachers are using Zoom that we had our HuddleCam HD webinar Zoom certified, just to offer the best integration with Zoom. And PTZ Optics and HuddleCam HD are kind of sister companies. And the HuddleCam HD Pro is a webcam that offers the ability to pan, tilt, and zoom, to zoom into what the students are interested in. And it's only $299. So we offer some really great webcam options for teachers. We also have some really great options for classrooms. And this is a PTZ camera. And this camera starts at $399. It's the HuddleCam HD 3X. And we usually pair it with a wireless speakerphone, the HuddlePod Air, and it's only $299. So we can really start off on some low budgets to help, whether it's a rural school or a school district itself, to really enable lots of classrooms in one fell swoop when we're able to get the grant funding available for that. Another popular camera, which is called the HuddleCam HD 3XA and the 10XA, includes both pan, tilt, zoom controls, but also audio controls so that we can bring in the microphones into a Zoom session. Here's just an idea of kind of the difference between optical zoom, which allows you to zoom in, and then a beam-forming microphone array, which would capture the audio from all of the students. So again, just high level, we can help you with classroom cameras that are designed for the classroom, and we can also help you with just webcams that teachers can bring home and they can use to have a video communication setup that's simple and easy to use. Everything from HuddleCam HD is plug and play. It's USB. You plug it into your computer. And this example is kind of like in an art studio where this HuddleCam HD Pro, which is very affordable, plugs into your computer via USB, can zoom in and actually have electronic pan tilt zoom to show folks on the Zoom call details of what's going on, which is highly important for education. Now, we have a lot of simple plug-and-play systems that are wireless, which is ideal for a lot of classrooms. We don't want to have cables running everywhere. And the HuddlePod Air, the Huddle Pair, and the HuddlePod Air Duo are all good options that our partner team can review with you guys. One of the most popular cameras in higher education, not so much K through 12, but it is some of the more advanced K through 12 high school areas, are putting in auto tracking cameras, which can automatically follow the teacher up at a whiteboard or a presentation space. And this is really nice because it gives teachers the ability to decide whether they want to see the full body or a half body shot, for example, or a full body with a whiteboard in the background. And it's just a really great camera from a management perspective. In higher education, we see this a lot, but with more funding becoming available for K through 12, we're seeing a lot more lecture capture. And what this allows the students to do is to go home and watch the lectures that were recorded that day. If they were sick, if they couldn't make it, if they are watching via Zoom or a distance learning situation. In this scenario, we've automated lecture capture where we've got the auto tracking camera. We have the Echo 360 lecture capture system, but there's others out there as well. and then the learning management software as well, which all tied together in an automated way. The Simple Track can do a lot. And there's a lot of different scenarios. Are you using Zoom? Are you using Microsoft Teams, Google Hangouts? Lots of different scenarios. So I show this diagram not to go over each piece of the pie that is possible, but just to let you know that our partner team at PTZOptics and HuddleCam HD can help you in a variety of scenarios. Now, with PTZOptics, we offer a little bit higher end cameras than the HuddleCam HD line. They have a 5-year warranty, and they offer a lot of flexibility, and they're really future-proof in many scenarios. Here's just showing all the different connectors on the back of these cameras. And maybe, when you're getting this funding, you're thinking, we're using Zoom today. But in the future, you may want to do something a little bit more advanced. Technology changes so quickly. The PTZOptics cameras have a plethora of opportunities to future-proof your technology acquisitions. And this is just another diagram showing this. So just high level, we have cameras for classrooms. They can easily be mounted, whether it be on the ceiling or a wall. Esports clubs in classrooms are starting to become more popular. We have a whole book and setup for supporting esports. Obviously, there's meeting spaces, right? And schools have meeting spaces where they would like to video conference in experts and students and teachers and parents from around the world. And it's important to have that type of technology. Another big one is live streaming sports. And here we're showing a school in the Bronx in New York City. I actually was there helping to set them up with some PTZ cameras to live stream their sports that they're doing. This picture is more recent. You can see we have one of the students wearing a mask, but she's involved with their school's broadcast club in Hubbard, Ohio. So there's just so many different types of technology that's being used today in the school and organizations. Broadcast clubs, I'm passionate about helping broadcast clubs because we're teaching students to use the latest technology that's coming out today. And we also offer joystick camera controllers for student camera operators. A lot of students are being involved not just in esports, morning announcements, and broadcast clubs, but they're also helping to stream their graduations that happen every year. And this is actually a virtual graduation you can see here that was done. And we have some content about all of that. I'm not going to go into the details of how the different options for connecting these cameras because we have the partner team, right? And I do think because there's such a variety of technology and options for technology acquisitions via these grants, I think it's important for folks to reach out to the partner team. But here's just a simple example: a webcam plugged in via USB, and then a PTZ camera, which has maybe mounted further away from the teacher, not using USB cables that can only extend 16 feet, but an SDI cable that is then converted to USB, just to kind of give your production value a little bit better of a situation. So I'm not going to go into these in super detail, but again, just kind of high level showing some of the examples. And a case study that was recently published is called Rosemont College, and they have equipped their entire classrooms with video communications equipment, and they were really happy with the results, especially over the past couple years. So take a look at some of those case studies we have available. There's so much that you can do, and again, it's a wide variety. So we're here for you, and we want to help you achieve your unique goals. That everyone's kind of in a different place, and we want to help you guys. We've got a great support team. We just won an award for our tech support, and we can help your project succeed. We have a lot of different ways to be in touch and work with you guys. So that's it for this webinar. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. It's really been a pleasure. I wanted to mention that everything we talked about today, plus more, we have an entire research document that's going to be available. I believe the URL is ptzoptics.com/grants-4-edu. And we'll put the link to that hopefully in the description of this video and the webinar. So that's it. Now we have time for Q&A. If there's any questions, I really highly recommend everyone reaches out to partners@PTZOptics.com. Zoom back to my first slide here. Okay, that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for watching today. Thanks for joining.